Hey everybody, welcome to episode 19 of the Palmcast. We have a fantastic guest in Jeff Anderson on today. We'll introduce Jeff in just a moment, but Teddy, can you go ahead and start us out?
Yeah, Tom, great to see you again. Jeff, thank you for being on, sir. This episode of the Palmcast is proudly sponsored by Nelson Plant Food. For over 30 years, Nelson has been providing high quality fertilizers trusted by growers, landscapers, and gardeners alike. Whether you're planting palms, growing from seed, or maintaining established landscapes, Nelson Plant Food delivers the nutrients your plants need to thrive. Visit nelsonplantfood.com, all one word, to learn more and support the companies that support the palm community.
Love it. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, Teddy, I made this comment earlier prior to us actually starting, but you look very happy and refreshed. How's your week been?
Oh man, great. I spent some time down in Florida, which went down to the beach and I need to get out of Tennessee for a little bit. I think you went to the beach too, right?
I did. I went to Gulf Shores, Alabama, so down,
Nice.
well, right next to Gulf Shores. But I probably had the same kind of reaction as you, where as you got to a certain point, it was just a ton of palmettos and butillas, and you saw a lot more than me. But I was just very happy to be somewhere where I just saw palmettos like your average, tree. So it was good to see that. I felt at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jeff. Thanks for jumping on. I've been chatting with you for a while. Actually, I think Tony Cerbone had mentioned that I need to reach out to you, have you on the show because you're, a big brain, and we always love to have the big brains on this show. Always love to bring people who are way smarter than us on the podcast. So I appreciate you hopping on and being able to spend some time with us.
Well, thank you.
So, for everybody who does not know you, tell us about you and you know w and why you're here ultimately.
Okay. You want me to go back to my childhood?
From the
But
beginning, Jeff. No, I'm
okay,
kidding.
I'll try to do a synopsis of it. But I originally grew up in Minnesota, and I don't like the cold at all. And people like when it gets cold, people say, "Oh, you should be able to take the cold. You're from Minnesota." And I said, "Well, God didn't ask me, I guess, where I wanted to be born. Otherwise, I would have told him Hawaii or something because I
Exactly.
don't like the cold." But I remember going to Como Park Conservatory in St. Paul, and they had all these palms, like in the conservatory. And I just felt like I was in heaven from just the littlest kid. And my favorite thing in there were the palms. Of course, I love all plants. Currently, I am the Doña Ana County Cooperative Extension Agent in Agronomy and Horticulture. So I've been in this position for 18 years, but I worked 16 years in the floral greenhouse industry, um, top grower in the country. I am a humble person. And so with the people you've had on Palm, the show here, that, I feel like almost intimidated. And I'm also in New Mexico out here in the middle between the east and the west and the north and the south. And a lot of times I feel like I'm totally on my own. And I can go from here. I feel like I'm on the spine of the Rocky Mountains. And not only weather, but if I'm facing north and I tip to the left, then it's over to Arizona and California and all the different palms they grow there in Vegas and everything. Right southeast with the humidity and everything and palmettos, or sables, not just palmettos. Um, so it's just kind of different where I sit to see both sides of like the coin. It's like being on that edge of the coin and be able to observe in two different directions. So we have our own challenges here. Listening some of the Palmcast things that were mentioned about sables, like growing in the desert. I had a friend, still have him, from Oregon, Sean Hogan, and he was visiting here. And I had needle palm growing out in full sun. And we're at about 4,000 feet and we have 11,000 candle foot here. And it's, humidity can go down to 3% or even less. And currently our temperatures like now are running 104 to 106. Um,
Right now?
and yeah, right now. So
Holy moly.
we started out early this season hitting up to 105, 106, and then it dropped down, and now it's back up to being hot. And we've had a lot of rain this year so far. We've had 4 inches or so, maybe 4.5 inches in what, 6 months. So that's a lot for us right now, considering the past we had 3.5 and 4.5 for the whole year. This has been a boom, and we're supposed to get a monsoon season, so we're supposed to get rain. But the last rain we had, which was like a month ago, we had like an inch or an inch and a half. And it's amazing how you can see palms and anything else just change and grow and remarkable with one rain. And having friends that are in Texas or in the Southeast, like Hayes and that, and talk about being dry out there, and it's like, you've got to be kidding. When you guys talk about being dry, oh, like 60 inches of rain normal, and we only got like 48, 38, 40 inches of rain. And I'm like, gee, a couple of years ago, we had 3.5 for the whole year
Wow.
in those kind of temperatures. So it's a challenge here. But I will say that my property, I have over 1,000 palms on it, besides other things. So I like to mix and incorporate different plants throughout the canopy. So I've been told my place looks like Costa Rica, Brazil, like it fell off the Mediterranean coast, those kind of things. So my house is Mediterranean with a red clay tile roof. That's always been my dream, is to have that type of house. But it's really nice. But you go from out on street side and you step into the yard and it's like 20-degree drop in temperature within a couple of feet. And the palms just cradle you and canopy over you. And I have a lot of sable palms. I gotta admit, I really love sables because they'll grow in sun or shade and they don't grow too fast. So they have these huge advantages. Um, Dwarf ones, super dwarf ones, tree ones. And then there's always that one you want to grow and you can't. Like what is it, Mauritiiformis or so?
That's one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saw
Or
that in
Maritima.
California with these huge leaves, and they were so beautiful. And yeah, it's just not cold hard enough for here. So yeah, I love growing just everything I possibly can, although I'm only on a third of an acre, so I don't have a lot of room. So it's hard to imagine 1,000 palms on a third of an acre and then everything else that's there. But I said, not all the palms grow, 60, 80, 100 feet tall.
Yep.
There are ones that grow like 18 inches tall. And then I have multiples of everything. So once in a while I do a tour of my house. And it's one thing to look at a picture. It's another thing to actually walk into it. And then when people walk into it, they see it and they think, oh, it's just this jungle and I won't be able to get through it. When you walk into it, that it's the oh my God moment type thing. Even I still, when I walk in, now I see it every day. When I walk into it, sometimes I'm like, wow, this is really impressive. Because I live in town, I live in a historical area. And when I first bought this house, all the yards in my area are level, flat, one to the next, they all look the same. Well, I figured out where my utilities are. Being in an old neighborhood, my utilities come from the alley. So the front yard, I dug down 2.5 feet to make a retention pond for collecting water off the house. But since we don't get a lot of rain, it may turn it into a sunken garden. So then took the other soil, mounded it up. So when you walk into my yard, it's like 15 feet on the other side of all this is the street and sidewalk. But when you sit in there, you feel like you're in a totally different world because you're literally surrounded by palms and flowers and things going up above you and everything. It's kind of amazing, I guess.
I
But I
have a
love
lot.
touring around.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, so
I'm
many.
Yeah, so that what you just gave us, I got like 5 questions already. I'll go in order, and I'll give you a chance too, Teddy. I promise. So I feel like the vibe that I get from your place is a lot like Hayes and Banana Joe, where it's basically like even talking to Hayes and Banana Joe both on the Palmcast was like I look behind them and I just see trackies, or I just see you're literally, like you said, under the canopy, and it looks like you're in a whole new world. So that's kind of what I get the vibe out of you as well. And I think it's very interesting how you essentially started from basically, as you said, a flat yard. You dug it down, and you obviously had the foresight to do all this, right? I think a lot of people who are listening may not have done that on purpose. They may have done that on accident. They may not have done that at all. They may have just tried to work with whatever the flat ground is that they have. But I think it's pretty cool that you had this idea that, you want to have this in the jungle canopy kind of look, because I was down in Alabama, as I said, and I stopped by the house of Doug Akers. And Doug's house is not, I wouldn't say it's the same uh, environment that you have, like in that canopy look. But Teddy, I don't know about you. I was walking around and man, he's got some of his sables. I mean, he has a lot of palms, but I'm primarily like my eyes lock in on the sables. And his Mexicana is probably got to be 15 to 18 feet tall of clear trunk. And he's got palmettos, he's got cause, like he's got everything. And there definitely is this amazing feeling of just being underneath all these things and just being, like you said, things could be happening on the street, but man, just you're inside of that little bubble that you've created. It's your microclimate, your jungle, right? Like I think that's incredible. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I get a lot of people saying, "Can you design my house to look like yours?" And I'm like, "No, everybody's different. I don't think you'd want to do this." Although the house next to me, my house is built 1940. The house next to me was built 1895, so it has like the super thick adobe wall. Mine has thick adobe walls, but that one has really. And the guy that bought it next door to me is 26 years old. And he was so excited, like, I have a house in it. It's like the nicest neighbor you could possibly want, and younger, and he's excited. And so yesterday we were out in his house planting palms because I got, and he's like, "Oh, you don't have to give me all this stuff, and let me pay for it." And I'm like, "Hey, I've got palms lined up in containers. I can't help myself. As seed falls, I get a plant from somebody, I've got to grow it, and then it becomes, where am I going to put it?" So I said, "Don't buy anything. I've got everything you need for your yard." So
Well,
we're going to really get into it.
and the good thing for him is that he will be able to benefit from all of your growing and what actually works rather than him trying to go online and figure something out, right? So I think
Um,
you helping him out, that's awesome.
and I gave him the Cold Hardy Palm book, and his friends of his age come over and they see it, and for me to talk to them, it's just amazing to have this group of young people they're so excited, about the plants. So it's
He
pretty cool.
probably he probably feels like you're the best neighbor that he could have as well. If I could imagine, but I think you're right. You're hitting on something. There's definitely a new wave of younger people that are getting into plants and palm trees and Tom and I talk about that a lot. Like every year, every couple of years, new people are buying houses that just didn't have a house before, and um, they're figuring out stuff that'll grow, and the whole new generation that's going to start planting stuff all over again. So one of the great things of like having you as a guest on is that all these new people that watch our show are going to get to hear your knowledge, and it'll help them in their yard as well, for sure.
One of the things I see that's very difficult in my profession, I do a lot of lectures and different things getting out. And I talk about landscaping and I talk about palms, and sometimes I get, oh, here's Jeff again, going to talk about palms. And I'm sure maybe you guys here, I don't know. There are people that love palm and people that absolutely hate palms.
For
Yep.
sure.
Same thing with oleanders, same thing with a lot of stuff. Like around here they say, and I say, well, why don't you like palms? Well, we don't want it to look like California. We hate California. We don't want it to look like California. And I said, so you're fine planting mulberry trees and you want it to look like New York? Well, well, we want to use native plants. And I'm like, well, the plants you use that are native aren't actually native to here. This was a high grassland, mostly all grass. So where they say, I want just strictly natives. And I said, so you just want a yard of grass, high altitude grass. And they look at you like you've lost your mind. And they're like, no, these other things. I said, well, that comes from the Sonoran Desert, or that comes from southern Chihuahuan Desert. It doesn't even grow here.
It came
But
from a
to adapt,
desert.
it
They
came from the desert.
they equate a desert with every
Uh,
desert. Yeah,
we, we had the yellow bird of paradise. And I said, it came from Argentina. And like creosote, everybody thinks creosote is native here. And I said, but at what stage is something native? Because if you know that creosote came from Argentina 10,000 years ago, and it's here and it's going all the way up to Albuquerque now, is it native if you know that? So, I tend to think like we're all of this world and things keep changing. So the way it was when I moved here 43 years ago is quite different. We're having more Sonoran plants naturalize into our area because the desert is warming up. We're warming up a lot, changing climate here. So we may be Sonoran Desert before long. I don't know.
Yeah, Tony Avent from Plant Delights, he said something great about that was like what you're hinting at is climates are changing, so spreading plants around might actually save those plants because they're going to be in new habitats that are mimicking the habitat they came from that's diminishing, too
Right.
hot, too cold, too dry. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, spreading plants around is the greatest thing. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I don't know where they get their ideas from sometimes. So, and I said, at one time back in, and I'm going to say Jurassic, Triassic, whatever period, this whole area was covered in sablite palms and redwood forest. And because you could go out in the desert here and you can find petrified palm wood and petrified redwood trees and things like that just around. So yeah, like okay, another thing about native plant people. Okay, what time period are we referring to?
Yeah,
When there were palms here, or when it turned into the desert? They were both native at this spot at one time.
exactly. Well, here before I forget, I had so many questions that popped up. So we heard about what your summer temperatures are like. What are your winter temperatures like? What planting zone are you?
Oh boy, I think you could do a sliding scale. So, in the valley it's 3,850 feet, but on the mesa it's 4,300 feet. We sit in the Rio Grande River Valley here, which has got really good soil. So I like living in the valley, but people like living up on the mesa because you get the view of the mountains here, the Oregon Mountains, and it's spectacular and things like that, and sunsets. But our climate when I first moved here was a 7A. We're now considered an 8B. So sometimes we're an 8A, sometimes we're a 9A, sometimes a 9B. 2011 when we went 10 below zero, we were like what, 6B, something like that. So there's wide swings because we sit at high elevation and we sit between different masses of air. So we can get hit with them in the Midwest, the air coming down the central part of the country and hitting down North Texas, like happened in what, 2019, the horrible storms they had there. And then it backs up going west, where we have the mountains in it. But if it stays long enough, it goes down to El Paso and comes around, it comes from the south back up. But if it comes from the west, that's generally pretty mild. But if it comes straight down the Rocky Mountains from Denver, it's like freight train express of the Arctic cold. So you never know quite what you're going to get hit with. Pretty extreme. And during the summer, we can get like really humid because we'll get the Gulf of Mexico moisture coming up during the monsoon, getting pulled up. We're not used to humidity. You get dead, nobody can live. And then you get the Gulf of California, Tia Cortez moisture will come up too at times. So it kind of comes up like this, or it comes down like this, or it comes in like this. So yeah, those are our climate zones, but we're generally considered an 8B at the moment.
Hmm.
How,
That's a big change from a 7A.
Oh yeah, yeah.
and,
I remember
and
we used to get snow.
and a big change from your times in Minnesota. I was going to ask you when, so I envision you bought your place, you were uh you dug down, you were prepping all this stuff. How Where did you get your palms? And did you start them all from like liner size, 1 gallon? Did you get them tall? Like, how did that process look? Because I'm imagining, we see the end current jungle, right? But at one point, I make this comment all the time that my wife used to always laugh at me because all the liner size plants I grew after our freeze in 21, she called them all my blades of grass. I planted them very, very small, and it took a couple of years, but now I remind her every time I'm out there, they're no longer blades of grass. They're actually all starting to trunk now. So, like, what did that process actually look like here for you?
So the house I'm currently in, I bought in 2010. In 2011 is when we went below zero. So where my house sits, we went 5 below, 10 below outside of town, a little farther out there, 25 below zero.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it got cold.
Wow.
But the way I started, so that first year, I always tell people that first 2011, I put all the palms in the house. So my house is being renovated. Like I said, it's old. So it's being all redone. I remember the contractor showing up and saying, well, how am I supposed to work? And I said, you're not going to work. I've got thousands of dollars worth of plants and I can't put them outside. So just take it off, go do something else because I'm not putting these plants outside. But so anyway, I have a friend in Las Vegas who is very interested in palms. That's ML Robinson. And so Clark County Extension has a botanic garden with a lot of palms due to ML. So he collects different species of different things. And I was after him to collect different sources of Washingtonia foliifera and have those on display there, but that hasn't happened. Um, so a lot of things I've done mostly from seedlings from my friend or I grew or I picked up in California, like my Perigubia sumca. Picked that up in California from KW Palms there. Um, but yeah, and then there were some palms that were brought in here. One of the stores brought in Mexican sables, 5 gallon, I think, yeah, 5 gallons from Texas there. So we don't tend to order a lot of things from Texas here because of quarantines, fire ants, different things
Yep.
like that. And it's farther to ship from Austin than it is from like Phoenix. So the nurseries here buy a lot of stuff from Arizona or California. It's just shipping is closer and easier than buying from Texas. But it's just like two different plant palettes. So that's how I got my Mexican sables to begin with. They came from, I think, Greenleaf Nursery in Texas there. And my tallest trunk on those, they were 5 gallons when I planted them in 2011, and they're now have 7 foot trunks about on them. And this year they seem like they're all flowering. So I'm going to have way too much Mexican sable seed. I had buckets and buckets of it from last year that nobody wants the seed. So nobody out here at least wants it. We don't have bugs that eat into weevils or anything that eat into the seeds. So it's like everything that falls tends to come up easily. So but anyway, that's kind of how it's gotten was, like if I travel out to Texas when I was in Austin, I bought some Sabal watermelonensis plants out there, or I've got friends there in the area And you exchange plants. And so that's how it's kind of worked up. And then I'll grow them in containers and find a place in the ground. And like I said, it used to be easier to find a place in the ground. So not so easy anymore. So I've got the last thing that I really, really want. I mean, there are a lot more things I really want, but I was finally able to get Brahia Moriae, and that to me is a treasure. There was a guy in California that had a bunch of seed. He just gave it away, and so I got probably 8 of them now, I think. Um, Moriah, I got one that's really starting to turn really blue, getting that blue blush and white blush on it, which I think they're stunning. I saw Tony's in Dallas there, and it's just why don't we grow so many more of them? I know they're slow growing, but it's a matter of figuring out how to help them grow faster. So I have a Chilean wine palm. I have a lot of different things.
I'm looking at your list, and Teddy, I think I mean, you'll probably be as excited as I am about this list. But you have a Brazoria, you have a Cause Arm out there,
Yeah,
and I mean, I guess you haven't. You were telling me prior to the show that I think what was it last winter that your lowest temperature was what 29? You said
28 degrees, one
28.
night, one night. That
Can you
was it.
imagine that, Teddy? 28
No.
degrees as your as your low.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm guessing it was dry too, so
yeah.
really
Mhm.
good for palms with damage.
Yeah, I do notice when we get rain and then you get a cold, or if we had a light snow and you get cold, there's
Yeah.
far more damage than if it just stays dry. You keep that moisture out of the bud. That's important. But the most planted palm, worldwide and here is Mexican fan palm.
Yep.
And I'm always telling people you shouldn't be planting that. You should plant at least the California fan palm
Yeah,
kit.
agreed.
It's
Yep.
much more cold hardy. But I said, you can understand when people say, "Oh, I hate palms," because the Mexican fan palm there, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just our climate here. 6 months a year, the leaves get frozen. Usually they would freeze like in sometime in December because they start freezing at 22. And then they freeze, and then they're not going to really grow out until maybe June when it gets hot enough to really push out. But then they grow 3 feet a year. And yeah, so you end up with a skinny pole that's always frozen. But if you grew a Mexican sable or some of the other ones, it would be beautiful and not overgrow the space and not be freezing the leaves off.
Teddy and I
That's
always say that. If only people would just grow more sables, right, Teddy?
like always sables. Pick the sables first.
Easy
Build your back,
Yeah.
solution.
build your backbone, and then you can experiment from there.
Yeah, people are impatient. They're like, but I want to palm really fast. And I'll tell you, in 2011, after the freeze, I had a cactus in a pot and a California or Washington Philippa California fan palm had germinated in their seed. Somehow it got in there, birds eat them and they drop all over. But there was this one leaf, seedling leaf, and I knew it had to be California fan palm. And after the freeze, it was still green. It hadn't frozen. It was still green. I thought, boy, you really want to live after that
Mhm.
freeze and sitting in a pot, and not a big pot, just a little, like a 5-inch pot. And so I planted it in the ground. So I can mark exactly the day I planted that seedling in the ground. And that palm is somewhere 18, 20 feet tall now. Next to the Brahia armata, which has maybe a foot of trunk.
I
So
love
Yeah,
I
that,
planted
I
at the same time.
I love Brahia Armada, man. That's like I know
yeah,
I have a couple growing in pots that I'm gonna try to find a spot for once they get older, but that's like always been one of my favorite palms. I feel like
Uh,
if I could grow, like I see Tony's is beautiful. It's remarkable what he's able to do. Actually, I should probably also say I have not been to his place, but I imagine his place is probably that same jungle vibe of like his front yard and all the properties on his road that he has like he's planted everything there. Probably the same kind of vibe is like you're just walking down the street and then all of a sudden you just see one palm, two palm, three gigantic foliferas. It's like, well, where the heck am I?
yeah, my largest Armada. It's in my backyard, and unfortunately, you can't directly see it because there's so much stuff. But it has probably, I'd say, 12 to 15 foot of clear trunk on it.
Oh man.
Man.
And I
Shoot.
planted one at a friend's house who died several years back, but I went by the house yesterday and it was flowering.
Oh,
So I took some pictures of it. I'll have to wait and see if they save the seed. But I had planted a California fan palm in the design and they had cut it down. So, which is sad because it had about a 4 foot trunk on it. It was really beautiful.
Getting really fat by that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, like I've got the first palm I planted at my property was a California fan palm. And I didn't raise it from seed. I bought it. So I know it came in from California. But that palm has a 4 foot trunk on it. So a lot of times they run, like 3 feet, 3.5 feet. And once in a while you see these massive ones, and I have a massive one. So I also have a couple hybrids, and one of the hybrids looks a lot like a Mexican fan palm, but it has cold hardy genetics in it. So unfortunately, the filibusters, the hybrids, you can't always pick out which way they're going to go.
right.
Less cold hardy, more robusta looking. But and I have a theory on that too. So I don't know if anybody's thought of it, but if you're looking at the Washingtonias, you look at the Mexican fan palm and the extension of the ligule, which I found out doesn't have a name for what that is. It's just that fringe, a papery fringe off the ligule. On the Mexican fan palm, it doesn't have any. On the California one, that can be quite long. And I would like to somehow get around and look to see that depending on the length of that fringe, does that indicate any more cold hardiness? Since that trait is coming from the oleifera and robusta doesn't have it. So if it has more fringe, who knows? But the one that looks really like robusta in my yard has quite a bit of fringe on it.
Hmm.
Interesting.
I don't know if anybody's ever thought about that one. I look for trying to find little identifying markers. So if you went to the nursery and you wanted a filibusta, you can choose maybe if they have the ligule length like that, that you might have a better option for something that's a little more cold hardy in a hybrid. Just a thought. But speaking of hybrids, I love the hybrids. I love mule palms. I got a mule palm that has about 7 feet of clear trunk now. And it has this huge head, huge. And it's never burnt from any kind of freezing, any kind of snow. We've had some snow events and different things. We had the 2019 cold. It was planted in summer 2011 after that major freeze. So it's been there and it's never had any freeze damage on it.
Hmm.
It's a gorgeous thing. I wish it was in a more prominent, visible location. It's in my driveway kind of area, which you can see really kind of well, but it's not like featured like how beautiful it is. But they're all beautiful. So
I'm man, I gotta tell you, I'm a little bit jealous of your climate. And it's so interesting because, as I did my research on you, and I was looking at New Mexico in general, and New Mexico doesn't strike me as palmy paradise.
for the most part, it's not. But you get up to I'm surprised with Albuquerque as many palms as they're starting to grow. That shows you climate change because 40 some years ago, that did not happen. But we're even able to grow like bougainvillea outside now, which when I moved here, you could not do that unless you wrapped it up and put heating cables and all that. And people are planting them like perennials and they die down and they come back now. But yeah, we kind of sit in a bubble. So it's between like El Paso. El Paso is warmer than here. Now, would I want to live in El Paso? Maybe not. I mean, to me, it looks like an industrial city, and they've
Yeah.
done a lot of work to improve its look. And the downtown is looking better and everything. But it's that warm area that extends up to Las Cruces, and then will extend out to Truth or Consequences. and it kind of cuts off there following the Rio Grande. And you go north of that and it drops off quickly. You get to Socorro and it's totally different climate up there from there up to Albuquerque. And even going west of here, you get out of our valley area. You know, you can grow some of the palms more cold hardy than that, but it's a lot harsher. So we sit in that, you know, because we have the river coming through and everything. It's quite different. We have the second largest, or almost the largest, pecan orchards in the United States.
Really?
40,000 acres just in this valley. You talk about pecan
Huh.
trees. You get up on the rise, and all you can see as far as you can see is a forest of pecan trees.
Huh.
Interesting. I'm learning geography today. And
And they use 1 trillion gallons of water, pumped water. Well, I should say pumped, and if there's river water, 1 trillion gallons a year.
That's what I was going to ask you that as well. Like, obviously, we heard about how much rain you get. So you're like your whole yard's on drip irrigation, I'm guessing.
Well, micro sprinklers. So
Okay, okay.
so it spreads it out a little bit. But I don't specifically water the palms. They get they get water from the areas I do take care of. So when I
Okay.
hear like Sabal Minor grows, you know, wet areas or next to rivers and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, we hardly water them, and they seem to just thrive here. I think our climate's good for a lot of palms because without the high amount of humidity, we don't get diseases, we don't have the insect problems. We may have some fertilizer issues at times for certain palms, but for the most part, they just look better. So if you take a Washingtonia from Arizona and California, and I guess the thought is they grow faster, and you move them to our climate, you can tell exactly when that palm, if you shipped them in, exactly where it came in, because you can tell by the inner nodes of the leaf bases when it gets up to where it was, it's a lot tighter. And a lot of times the palm will thicken at that point substantially. And that's because of our growing conditions and lower humidity. And maybe, you know, the climate, they tend to be fatter, thicker, no matter what. So yeah, you can get those really big bases where in California, they'll tend to grow tall quickly and the base will be big. But here they're squatter, heavier. I mean, they to me, it's like looking at the Thebes or Karnak, the temples in Egypt with these massive columns, which makes it really impressive if you want a fast growing palm to grow Washingtonia foliifera and get these massive columns. But then people put them in their irrigated yard with the sprinklers. And you know what happens to palms when you do that? They're made out of fiber, not out of wood. But even if they were wood, you know, you wouldn't be doing things like that. So then they get rotting at the base and then they have to take them out. And I'm like, don't plant them in your yard. You know, it's too wet. And I talked to my friend in Las Vegas with the casinos there. They have the big Canary Island date palms,
yeah.
and they you know, so heavily irrigated because of the tourists and wanting the green grass and so heavily irrigated. So they run into disease issues, you know, root rots and phytophthora and fusariums and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know, people ask, well, what's wrong? What's the problem? And I'm like, guys are watering them too much. You know, if you go to Vegas to neighborhoods there where people don't even water them really, they
Yeah.
don't have those problems. So I'm the same here. You just don't water them. That's interesting.
At
Hmm.
at what so I tend to agree with you. At what age, plant, or size would you consider it to be watered in enough, or I guess old enough to not have to water it in? Or do you do that? Because I mean, you're not going to do that on something you just planted for the first 6 to 12 months, right? You just want to take
Right.
care of it to allow the roots to get down deep. Like at what age or size, what's your criteria?
I will say that sables do like their water. Um, but given how many years? At least 5 years of not excessive watering, just getting them established. They're pretty tough. You could get by with just a decent water once a month. and not in the winter kind of things. The trouble with Sabal palmetto here, there are some that are here from the 1960s that were brought in from Texas for a tennis tournament they were having in the 60s. And they're still here, although a number of them just flat out got cut down because they decided to put in more parking lot. But they're surrounded by asphalt and they have like this tiny little planting area. And I'm like, they don't look the best, but they're not dying and they don't ever get watered
Hmm.
and they look crappy. And if they gave them a little water, they'd look a lot better. But that's tends to what happens around here a lot. We put in drip irrigation and then nobody ever looks at whether it keeps working and it goes off. And then a lot of businesses, they just flat shut it off. And a lot of the normal, what you call normal trees, they all die, but the palms seem like they don't die. They may not look good, but they're not dead. And the one benefit that we have is that normally if we get a summer monsoon period, well, the last few years have been super dry. Most of that survives. So in 2011, when we were below zero, there's a group of palms. They're Washingtonia robusta in town here in the sandy, gravelly soil, and they are not getting watered. They survive those temperatures. They look really bad, and they're still there growing. And that's been what, 15 years now? And they haven't been watered in 15 years, and they're still there growing very slowly. They don't look very good, but they haven't died. So sometimes when you hear about palms, oh, they need a lot of water, they're all tropical, they take so much water.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily, especially like if you get into California fan palm. Most of the time people overwater them here. They like less water. They do better with less water. But yeah, sables, um, yeah, I don't specifically water my sables all that much. And they look really good.
I I think our tendency is to water, right? And
Yes.
we always just go and think, oh, it's been, you know, so I'm from Illinois and I moved down here 6.5 years ago now. And I definitely, realized the big differences in the sun south here. The sheer intensity of the sun, how hot it gets, how early in the year. And I just feel bad for things that are laying on the ground for 8 to 10 hours a day when it's 108 degrees outside for, a week or two at a time or a month at a time, and the nights drop down in the 90s. So as a human, you lay out there and you're dying in 5, 10 minutes. So our tendency is we have to water everything all the time. And I think, I was just telling Teddy, I noticed some things in my greenhouse earlier today that a couple of my seedlings were just not as happy, and some just flat out perished. They were already on the weaker side, but one of the things that we have gotten, I don't even want to tell you how much rain we've gotten here recently, Jeff, because it'll probably make you angry. But we got a lot of rain recently, man. Like on what was it, Friday morning or whatever it was, we got a little over 2.5 inches of rain. Like it literally just the heavens opened up. And I think I just had some rot because my medium was just too heavy, like sopping wet, and for too long. So even Teddy said, I think sables in general do have some sort of a level of tolerance where it's like, okay, I don't mind wet, I don't mind dry, but too wet and or too dry are not good for me either.
My stables, the ones I grow, like I have them in a gallon container. I usually set them in a pan of water, and because our air is so dry and things dry up. I mean, that pan of water with an inch of water in there can be gone before I get home, even from work. It'll dry up that fast. So if I don't do that, then the palm's going to suffer. So it's kind of an amazing thing that when they say don't leave plants sitting in water because that's bad for them. But around here, during the summer, you really need to do that because it just goes so fast. When you're looking at our humidity is 10% right now,
Wow. That is
10% and 105. But yeah, so when we talk about rain, we some Someplace I said that in Minnesota too. Minnesotans were always very religious because you were always praying for summer. And when summer came, you were praying for winter. Well, here too, it's kind of like you're praying for the rain, but when the rain comes, you're praying it stops because it gets so humid and then the mosquitoes come out. So then you don't like that. So, as a human species, I think we do kind of somewhat praying for all these different things. We want the perfect conditions.
All the time.
Hmm. Yeah, so we've had a few bouts of those perfect conditions. Like I said, a mild winter, and then it heated up, and I thought, oh my gosh, is this going to be like the whole rest of the year over 100 degrees? But we went from mild winter to really hot, but that was only a week. And then it dropped down where the day temperatures were like 75, 77. It was like beautiful and perfect. The spring flowers bloomed and everything was perfect. Then we had a few days where the winds were like 60 some mile an hour and the sand blows and blasts everything and rips everything to pieces. And then we've had, like nice days, but just this week, half of last week and going into this week, we're back up to the really hot temperatures. But that's all the way from Vegas. They're like 112 and Phoenix and all that. So we're getting it too. And of course, West Texas gets it too. But it's amazing to see how some palms really love that. The sables like the heat. They really, my sables, you could see the leaves growing in them, and they're really responding to those warm temperatures and warmer night temperatures. The Washingtonia foliferas, they get really green and they look so healthy. Palms, for the most part, most of the palms like the heat. Parajubea supposedly doesn't like heat, but I'm surprised mine's doing really well here. So I
Hmm.
have Sumka and Toralii
How
and
big's your
California.
jubea? How big's your uh chilensis? How tall?
Oh boy, I bought it as 15-gallon in California. I think I bought it like 6 or 7 years ago. It has maybe a foot of trunk starting to go on it. Now, leaf wise, it's above my head, probably 6 feet, 6.5 feet. But
Wow.
it's like super green and super healthy. And it really responded when I put it, I was watering it by hand at first because it's out in the driveway area. And so I connected it to micro sprinklers and it has really responded to that. And then, of course, using a good palm fertilizer. So it's got like 3 new leaves pushing out of it. You can see 3 new coming out. So I changed palm fertilizer. So even I don't know everything. But I thought I had been doing the right things over the years, fertilizing my palms, and they've responded and they've done really well. But then when you get into some of the feather palms, there's been some issues. And so then I researched and I found out that too much nitrogen is toxic to palms because it offsets potassium. And I know things like that. But palms, they aren't. They have a different response. So too much nitrogen causes potassium deficiency. So if you look at the Mulder's chart, Mulder's chart of the elements and interactions, and if you're too high in this, how it knocks out that, and how everything should be balanced. Anyway, it's a really fantastic kind of a chart thing. And so I looked deep dive into like fertilizing palms and why you shouldn't fertilize them with like a grass fertilizer or this or that, anything. So a year and a half ago, it took me that long. I feel embarrassed even saying that. But I switched. I switched because I was getting potassium deficiency. So I fertilized with potassium nitrate and that didn't really help. And I thought in my mind, what do you teach about balance? And so a palm fertilizer is balance. And I thought, well, those are developer back east or something like that. And here we are in the West. We've got a lot of other stuff in the soil. But within that year, I saw changes. And even this year, I can't say whether it's a palm fertilizer, but it's probably the combination of the mild winter, the early spring and heat. But I'm getting the most luxurious, beautiful growth and good growth, but healthy good growth. So I had these mule palms that had some potassium deficiencies, not the one in the front yard, the big, real big one. That one always looks great. It's the other ones I had in the backyard, and they had this potassium deficiency. And I did take pictures of some of it and I cut them off this spring, but the new growth is coming out nice because I switched to palm fertilizer. And that's the only thing I've done different was change the fertilizer regime, what I'm doing. And they look very different. They look a lot healthier. And yeah, I'm seeing some really super improvements. So I've incorporated that into my teaching when I talk about palms is make sure you use the right palm fertilizer. Makes a difference, does make a difference. Um,
Hmm. Eh,
and
It,
I was at the university. I worked with stuff like this. I should know better too, but I thought, they're palms, they're green. It's not like you're growing them for flowers. I worked in the floral industry. So I don't know where my head was in thinking that it didn't matter as much on the fertilizer, but it does. It does make a difference.
I, I'm just still, I don't know, Teddy. I'm still surprised at, I guess I should have known because you live in a desert area, but just how dry and hot it is. I mean, I guess I didn't equate you to Vegas.
Yeah, a lot of times our temperatures run the same. So my friend and I compare, like, if he's having a storm, I know it's going to be here in another day. Like, if they're having a big wind event, I'm like, okay, it's going to be here like in a day because that's the prevailing winds or things. Unfortunately, sometimes the moisture doesn't come that way. So if they get a rainstorm, like when they were having all that rain in California, we didn't get any of that. I'm like, just a little farther. Come on, over the mountain, just a little bit farther. No, it didn't happen. So I think a lot of our rain tends to come from the Gulf of Mexico in the monsoon season. But yeah, I really do love palms. I love everything. I really, truly love everything. But I like the incorporation. So I see a lot of times people post a picture of one palm, and it's great to be proud of your one palm. It's like out in the middle of nowhere, and here's this palm and it's hard to get pictures of like a palm in a jungle setting where everything kind of meshes together in a 2D picture. You have to actually experience being in it. But yeah, I've been on Facebook and I look at people's posts and they're like, oh, 1,000 posts because they posted a picture of a Washingtonia folifera. And I'm like, I post a picture of this Kurjabia um, Sumka and it's like, I get one post and my friend says, well, you got one post. I said, yeah, I know who it was from. It was from you. And the other one was from me. So, but, I had one person say, I posted a picture of like the yard and things. They said, don't you have any other pictures besides that? You always show the same picture. And I said, it's from a different year, as things change. I actually do have a PowerPoint that I put together for here where I show the original house, how it looked when I got it. And then for the next, I think it's 12 years, each year, a picture
Oh,
from the area showing the development and growth. So I was telling my neighbor that too. I said, make sure you take pictures of what you're doing because that first year you feel like, oh man, this is so great. Look what I did. It looks so beautiful. And 5 years from now, it's like, I thought that looked beautiful. Look at it now.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
the opposite is like, um, nothing grew and everything's so small and nothing ever grows. But then you compare the picture and you're like, wow, it did grow a lot. And that was for me with like the Mexican sable, because they have to form their trunk and root system underground first. I'm like, you guys are never growing. You're just sitting there. And then, but if you compare the pictures, you're like, oh no, you did make significant growth, a lot more than I thought, substantially more. So it's good to have those pictures.
Absolutely.
I did pull a few PowerPoint pictures um, of my yard.
please.
Uh,
Oh, I was going to
um,
ask you. I was going to ask you, can you share your PowerPoint, please? People love pictures.
if I know how to do this. I got about a dozen and then a couple other pictures.
I love
Uh,
it. I
Do
think
I
that's a,
have the ability to share?
yep. If you hit, there you go.
We'll see. Oh, what happens here? I don't.
There you go. I see
I
it.
got I got two different screens, so I'm not seeing it at all.
You're on the PowerPoint screen, so I see it. May House
Yeah.
Photos 2026.
Yep. Yeah, I've got it.
Okay. Uh, okay, I gotta go okay there. So I can get control here. Uh, slideshow. Let's see if I can do it this way.
Extra credit, Jeff. I didn't even ask you for this. Nice job.
Beginning. Okay, there we go. Now I got you in the box so I can see you. Otherwise, I feel like I'm ruining my time. Which one are you looking at?
Presenter mode.
Presenter mode. I
I think
don't know how
this,
to change that.
if you do display settings, right? Uh, this is fine. Who cares? This is
That's
okay.
okay. I like the other one better, but
Yeah, this is okay.
Anyway, but as long as you can see it.
Oh, we see it.
So that is my house when I first bought it.
Get out. Okay.
So it had Bermuda grass, tufts of Bermuda grass, hadn't been watered in a long time. It had been repainted. It was actually worse than that. I've got a picture that's actually worse. And everybody thought, oh, this is such a beautiful color. I said, you've got to be kidding. It's like putty gray. It's really ugly. How can you think that looks good? And anyway, that was it. That's
I like how you
typical.
have I like how you have a planning and design description. Like you really sat
Oh,
down just like you're, I mean, obviously, because that's who you are, but it's great that you just have an idea. I just went out and I just planted a crap ton of sables and just hope for the best.
so I went from that to that.
Oh my goodness.
Unreal.
Are you
So
kidding
this
me?
is 14 years. So this was done last year, showing the change from one to the other. But I have the whole series of pictures in a PowerPoint. But you can see kind of this particular crepe myrtle here. I hear people hate crepe myrtles too, but I like them. And they say, oh, all the horrible things you hear. But this one came up from seed. I didn't realize that they have a deep, deep taproot. But that comes from, there are two different, I know we're talking about palms, but I'm going to
That's fine.
mention um, crepe myrtles. There's two types basically. I mean, there's more than that, but two types that are generally grown. Indicas and Florii, and the hybrids by the National Arboretum. What is the difference between the two? Now, if you are in the Southeast, it's like, it doesn't matter what the difference are. It does matter if you're in the West, where we're at, because of our dry soils, the alkalinity, the salt, all of that matters. So Boreai comes from Japan, and it comes from, I guess, near the coast and in the mountains and stuff. So it tends to form a taproot, grow on calcareous soils, and is exposed sometimes to sea salts and stuff like that. So it's more resistant to salt and drought. So it has deep taproot. Indica comes from a higher rainfall area, shallow root system, all those kind of things. So it's more susceptible to salts and alkaline soils. So
Hmm.
the hybrids have varying degrees of acceptance into our soils here. So if you are looking for a crepe myrtle here, I tell people don't get the ones with the round leaves and the bright colors so much because they're going to fail. They're not going to do as well. Get the ones where you have a drip tip, a pointier leaf. That indicates it has more Florii genetics in it, and it's going to be more adapted to our soil. Okay, long
Interesting.
story short, this pinkish one here came up from seed. So I get seedlings coming up, and I was pulling them out. And I tried to pull this one out and I couldn't get it out. But that's how I noticed they had these like humongous tap roots. And I was trying to pull it out and couldn't get it out. So I just took the pruners and whacked it off at the ground. And I said, well, next time I water, I'll water it well and I'll be able to pull it out. So then it grew up about a foot and a half again. And then I went to go pull it out. I couldn't pull it out. So I cut it off again. And then it came back and I thought, oh, well, it doesn't look bad there, but I'm going to just leave it. And this thing is growing like crazy,
Hmm.
doing like extremely well. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there.
No,
But
it's interesting because that's something I wouldn't think would even grow,
Yeah.
yeah, and It's not on regular irrigation. And there's a lot of crepe myrtles around town here that have that 4i genetics, and people don't hardly water them. They look good all the time.
Huh.
So when you hear these things like, oh, crap myrtles and they don't grow and all this kind of stuff, it all depends on the genetics. By the way, this tree next to it, that's Montezuma cypress, which is Mexico's national tree. Mexican sable here, and some other, I have an apricot.
Every time I hear Montezuma cypress, I think of Dr. David Creech. Are
Yeah,
you friends with Creech?
yes, I am.
Of course, yeah. Everybody
Yeah.
knows Creech.
So with that said, for a long time there, I sent him seed from the Montezuma cypress here that he was taking to China. From our one tree, there was a huge tree in town here. And apparently there were a lot more, but apparently to history, they were all cut down. And then the wood was used as vigas in the mission churches down through El Paso and that. So
Hmm.
they kind of wiped them out, and they clear cut the river here because the water didn't belong to the trees, it belonged to the farmers. So that was a big thing too. But if you were standing here, this trunk, this is about 5.5 feet of trunk right here. So if you were there, you'd be probably real, you know,
That's
need somebody
Tom's
there for
favorite size.
perspective.
It's a perfect
Yeah.
size, man.
So
That
yeah,
is
you went from
incredible.
here to there.
I almost want to say I don't believe you. Like that looks so good. It's not even funny. I mean, like, how does your mail carrier come to your house? Or is it you have a
Mailbox
mailbox?
is over here.
That would be the
Box
coolest
right
house to
there.
ever deliver. I mean, all your UPS guys must love coming to your house, just like to
They
walk through the
do.
whole. Yeah.
I run into them. They always like, oh God, we love coming into your yard. It's so much cooler and it's just beautiful. You know, you're a favorite yard to come into.
Wow.
So yeah, it's nice to walk into this. If I turned the camera around, it would be like a big, huge parking lot. So I had a church across the street from me, and they didn't take care of anything, just a huge parking lot. Now it's a movie studio. So up
Wow.
behind there is this is a bit of what I have. This doesn't show the sunken garden, but it's not as dense. You get in there and there's the walkways that go back this way and around. But I decided I started out with just, the clay dirt. And of course that gets muddy when it rains. And then so the city gives away free crushed glass. So I hauled about 30 tons of glass and put that all down for years. And then they had problems with not being able to get the glass. So then my next step was going to this. I had thought about doing concrete, and then I thought, no, I think I want to do this because they're like 4 inches thick. They allow the water to go through and trap underneath. So as soon as you put stuff like this down, you could see the plants benefit because it's trapping all this natural water underneath it. And it gives me a solid surface to work on. And in between, I did put the crushed glass when I got it. So it was green crushed glass. So I don't know, it looks kind of nice, I guess.
Yeah.
Great.
That was up here. So this last fall, I made the steps down into the sunken part and then did this whole, excuse me, Home Depot got the kind of limestone colored instead of the red or gray. So I put that down there. So this is my ponding area. So it made it a nice solid surface that drains that I have some patio furniture on and that you can sit down into, which is fun too, because all these palms kind of go around you. Except I had this Yucca foliifera, which grows like 40 feet tall. And I went to go trim the leaves off and I accidentally cut the whole thing down.
Whoops.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so I had to put a palm tree in there. Yeah.
Maybe you did that on purpose.
I don't know, maybe subconsciously, because it was kind of pokey, and that's why I was trimming the leaves off. But it was such a sharp blade when I went down the side to trim it, I didn't realize that it kind of curved and then took the whole thing out. What can you do? This is the newer project I'm working on the side of the house. where a lot of people leave the side of the house just kind of like that's where the trash cans get pulled through or something like that. So I've got olive trees and I've got palm trees and I've got some cycads I'm trying. I like cycads too because they have that palm look. And then I've got five huge pots here. So I've got cold hardy citrus in there. And then during the summer, I put caladium. So when you walk the side going to the backyard, it's like, wow, But it was muddy, so I've been working on these paved stones to put them down. And then I'm going to put a edging on here too. But it's all palms down that whole side too. Everywhere you go, there's always palms. Look, going too fast. This was just taken a couple days ago. My Mexican sable starting to bloom.
How old is
So
that one?
14 years old,
And planted as a 5 gallon, you said?
5 gallon, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of surrounded all this whole area on the bottom by concrete, so it's not like getting the most water, but it's growing real well there.
I would say it looks pretty dang happy to me.
Yeah, right now the flowers are all open, so it's very fragrant and it's covered in bees too. But I like bees, so I like watching the bees.
Yeah.
But it's a nice accent out front coming in, and then I've got these different yuccas and everything here. And again, this is the patio, that sunken patio area. You can see how that kind of drops down in there. It looks pretty nice when you're sitting in there.
It
When
looks
the
great.
mosquitoes get you. And then this was again the Mexican sable. And I tell people if you go by my berthia, you just have to push your way through because I'm not trimming the leaves. And I said, well, that maybe keeps some people out because they're afraid to go by it. And then I added this one here, this berthia, because my one in the backyard is big and beautiful. And I kind of had this spot, so I tucked it in. And there's a right here, there's a mule palm tucked in here. And then I've got a mandarin orange tree that occupies this area back here. And then a lot of native plants. And yeah,
At
so
this, so let me ask you a question. When you plant, so you mentioned you have a mule in there, and the mule obviously has a large overhead canopy. Are you concerned at all about crowding, spacing, not getting enough sunlight, all the above at this point?
I'm not worried about crowding in that. I'm worried about getting enough sunlight on some of them. So I have to clear a tunnel hole up through so that they get sufficient light sometimes. So that's the only thing. That's I have like this palm court I did in the backyard, and I've got six mule palms forming a circle, and then I've got four brachiarmatas on the corners, and then I got trachycarpus. I got a lot of palms because it's all palms, but they're all like different sizes and that. So, and then because it's so shady, that's the whole thing about my yard. You go out on the street side and it's blazing hot, and you got the pavement reflecting all the heat. And you go in mine, and I am growing ferns. So I'm growing Japanese holly ferns and aspidistra, are drought tolerant under the canopy, and they're thriving too. So it gives a different look.
Yeah,
And
that's one thing I'm noticing from every single picture is there's shade, and a lot of people, like I don't know, let's just say a silly example, like you're in the southeast, people are going to want to put their plants in full sun, and in where you're at, obviously that shade's super beneficial for one, for like you said, for yourself and visitors, you're going to get that cool um 20-degree different shade there, but a lot of plants probably do benefit from staying out of your full sun, I would guess.
it's remarkable how so many plants want full sun even here, even though we have 11,000 candle foot because of elevation and dry air.
Yeah.
You'd think you're doing them a favor, and most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, it's not a favor. Most of the time, they want to be out in that full sun, and it's like
Hmm.
it's blazing out there, and it's so much sun. Of course, certain things obviously don't like it, but
Yeah.
A lot of times some of my flowering stuff will grow really great in the shadier area, but it doesn't flower as well, is the trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This was just taken yesterday.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
it was so bright. And this was taken in Dallas. This is the Brahia Murray. I love these things. That was at Tony Cervone's house here, before his big freeze. So I love the color of these things. They're just so spectacular. And then my friend in Las Vegas, these are the Moapa palms. I don't know if you know the story on them.
Mm-mm, no.
Washingtonia foliifera. So they're growing in Moapa, which is northeast of Vegas. I don't think it's west, northeast a little bit. But he was telling me yesterday that they want to cut out most of these palms and get rid of them because though there's a little stream in here and there's a group saying it's not getting enough heat for this little fish. And
Oh,
so they want to get rid of the palms, which if you've ever seen these palms, it's really beautiful. They're black because of fire and stuff, but it's such a beautiful area. And I said, can't the little fish go upstream a little bit if they want to be out in the hotter sun? Why are they staying in the shade? But they also get protected under here from predators and stuff. So
yeah.
if you have it just wide open, I don't know. There's always been a fight about these palms because the Native Americans say that they were there and they were natural. And I think it's the Department of Agriculture in Nevada wants to remove them all because they say they're not native and they want to get rid of them. And yet it's the I think that's beautiful. And when you walk through there, it's beautiful. But it's just in this one little area. You go outside of that area, there's nothing but, Las Vegas only gets 4 inches of rain a year. So outside of that area, you just got like tiny little plants. There are no trees or anything there because it's so dry. It's like a moonscape. So anyway, I think those are beautiful. I'm not gonna go there.
I need to have you try we do have some sample sizes of Nelson plant food in their palm
Mhm.
fertilizer. I should have you try Nelson.
I would definitely try it. It took me time. I knew Gary Hennemer, and so there was the Palm Quest conference. You guys know that one?
Yep.
Well, that I did not know about that until this year. I got asked to speak there. I had the most wonderful time. Palm people are just so wonderful. There's a camaraderie, there's a laughter and a lighthearted feeling, and being able to share stories, with people that are mostly from Texas to Florida, Louisiana,
Yep.
the Carolinas, and Georgia, and things like that. So, me coming from farther west and ML coming from Nevada and a few people from California, um, I kind of at first thought it would be more of a southeastern thing in a way, but it was so wonderful. It was so wonderful because I thought, why am I thinking this? I love sable palms. I grow sable palms
Mhm.
and everything. And some of my first information about coal-hardy palms came from the Southeastern Palm Society because who else had that information? California doesn't necessarily need it. So that's where it came
Exactly.
from. So I wish there were more books out on coal-hardy palms. Like when I started my house 15 years ago, actually planting a lot more than I did at any other previous house, um, there wasn't a lot of information, in journals and a few things like that. But availability of some of this stuff, like I did get seed of the variegated palmetto. I'm hoping to get a variegated palm out of that. I mean, I'd treasure that, a few things like that. But if I was doing it over again, I'd probably have a lot more mule palms in certain areas and do things a little bit different. But I'm pleased with what I have right now. And so that's why I like to work on my neighbor's house because I got space.
Yeah.
So I even planted, they say nothing grows under a mulberry tree. So I planted at my neighbor's a bunch of sable miners underneath there, and they're thriving and doing well. and they're competing with the mulberry roots and the drought and everything. So,
They're tough, man. Sable miners are tough.
yeah.
It's funny, Jeff, because you mentioned the Cold Hardy Palm book. I'm assuming that you're referencing the book by uh, Tom McClendon and Joe Levert.
Um,
If not, I have to send you one of
um,
those.
this one was Alan Miro.
Oh, I
Oh,
will.
yeah.
Yeah.
I probably had the other one somewhere else too, but this is Bedrock's Miro. But it was a really nice book, helpful. This is the one I had a bunch of copies. I gave one to my neighbor. He goes, I've read it from cover to cover now. So he's
Well,
really,
it's so I agree with you, right? Because when I got in this hobby, I also didn't have a lot of great opportunities to get information. I mean, Palm Talk, I think, is where I met Teddy originally, and then Palm Talk's where, I got a lot of my early advice, but I think some of the stuff that we've talked about over the years, Teddy, is everything's generalized. Everything is don't plant at this time of the year, don't plant after April, only grow this, don't ever grow that. And I think by doing not just this podcast, but just in general throughout my growing career and planting, I just met a lot of people like you and everybody else. Is you just learn there's so much information out there, and I'm humbled by like what you've done on your yard. Can you go back to the photo that has your whole yard? Like I'm honestly inspired, like wildly inspired, dude, by that. But like this is ridiculous.
so interesting. There's four houses on my block. So I conquered my house. The house to the east of me, I know the owner and he's renting it. So he said, you can do anything you want. I'll pay for the water, do anything you want. So I've been working at that with palms and everything. I also like Phoenix Theophrastes for a good reason. And now my neighbor on the west side is super interested in that. So I said, I got five Theophrastes seedlings that need a home. We're going to plant them there. So I
I've
like
got
Theophrastes. I've chosen the palms that I have chosen have to be able to tolerate at least 18 degrees without burning. Because we generally would hit 18 every year, one night or something like that. So the big one sticking up is a filibuster. Um, and I probably, if I was doing things over again, I wouldn't plant it, but it's there and it's kind of pretty. But it's gotten tall now. But luckily, my neighbor, the new kid, he's a lineman. So he climbed up and trimmed it for me for nothing. He goes, I got all the equipment. Let me climb up there and do it. And
That's
wow.
awesome.
but yeah, so the rest I want tried to pick out all the like really cold hardy because my house faces north. This is facing north. So
Okay.
in the winter time, this is in the cold shadow of the winter. So, and it's also facing north. So when the polar vortex hits, this is what it hits because it comes across the parking lots, the two parking lots across the street with nothing to stop it until it hits me.
Have you
So it
seen
really gets
things?
blasted.
Have you seen things in the middle of this jungle that are more tender, have less issues because of being under the canopy and being inside of the
Yeah,
protected?
absolutely. Yeah. A number of my cycads are that way. So I've got them planted along the right side of the walkway. It kind of raises up in there from where I dug out. And I've got Mexican sables there, but at their base, I have several different cycads and different things underneath there. Yeah, so I keep trying things out in different places as I seem to get more. I also have 26 citrus trees in here. So a different cold hardy citrus, which I get from Georgia.
Uh, this is definitely the Palmcast, but I'm just curious, what do you have in that department?
So in the beginning, I planted Arctic frost mandarin orange, which came out of Texas.
Yep.
And then I've had down the street from me, I'll mention down the street, there's two Harvey lemons that have been there for 70 years, and they thrive. And let's see, I have a Meyer lemon. I now have a MOA 8 blood mandarin orange.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the different things I have a citramelo,
Mm.
which has gotten to be about 10 to 12 feet tall, produces really well. I had planted a beautiful grapefruit over at my neighbor's house because if you grow a grapefruit from seed, they come mostly true. And it was a beautiful tree. And then she died, and the person that bought it decided they didn't want it there, so they chopped it out of there. It was absolutely gorgeous grapefruit tree.
Hmm.
But yeah, I try out cold hardy citruses, different ones.
Wow. I'm just I still can't get over that's only 14 years. I mean, I know 14 years. I have a 14-year-old son. So
Yeah.
just in the span of his life, you created that. That's remarkable. Congrats.
Yeah, when you think of the time frame, like those Argentinian saguaros were only a foot tall when I planted them 14 years ago too. And people are like, they scratch their head, how can you have cactus mixed in with all of that? Because we're so dry here. And then the micro sprinklers or the drip is only in certain areas. So, and then Argentinian saguaros and some of the South American cactus actually like a little bit more water and they tolerate the shade. Whereas our native Arizona saguaro would not be able to do that. It would just rot.
Hmm.
So you could incorporate different things like that. I like all of our different leucophyllums here. You know, when they burst into flower, just covered in purple flowers. You know, I love mixes of stuff. I like mixing the palms in so they kind of seep into the area and not just I can imagine a lot of different landscapes. I imagine just palms out, and I love driving through some neighborhoods and seeing like incredible specimens of palms. But this is all the room I have to do everything I want to do. That's what I tell people. I don't have any more space. So if I want to grow something and enjoy something, it has to fit in here somehow.
Yep.
I just make everybody work together.
They don't have a choice, do they?
They don't have a choice, and if they don't make it, they die, and then I move on. But every day, especially lately, when you try new things and they die, I realize how tough the toughest plants in my whole yard are palms. They're the ones that thrive and don't really give me any trouble. They can tolerate a drought. So if you miss one watering on something, it could be dead. But the palm, it's still there, still being just fine. Even little sable minors, newly planted sable minors, it's like their leaves just kind of go, they shrink up a little bit, and then you give water and they're back to being fine. And they establish really well. But other things just shrivel up and they're dead right away. So yeah, I really appreciate palms.
What's one of the palms you wish you could grow at your house?
Well, I'd love to be able to grow the Caryophoenix alfredii.
Yeah, for
I was
sure.
in Hawaii and I got a friend that's got one Madagascarensis, I think, from Madagascar. And he was saying, "Oh, I'm going to probably cut it down." And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to cut it down? It's so incredible. Well, it's getting too big and too tall, and I don't want the maintenance, and everything grows so fast. I'll just probably just cut it down, plant a new one in, and start over again. And I'm like, oh, I would kill for that. It was so beautiful. So when we were doing lectures in Hawaii about palms, and their big problem is, we're coconut rhinoceros beetle now, but the coconut palms, they had to climb the palms because the coconuts fall and kill tourists. But, I was talking to them, if you didn't have a problem with the coconut rhinoceros beetle, you could be planting Beccaria phoenix, and it's not like a huge coconut falling on your head, and it would work much better in the public areas. So I think I don't know how to convince, like even the city, I always talk to our city even here, trying to convince them that we should plant more palms. And then they turn around and plant ash trees that take 250 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water. And then shallow rooted, so they're breaking the sidewalks by pushing them
Yep.
up.
Yep.
And I'm like, in these narrow areas, you can plant palms. I'm not against other trees, but don't be against palms. I'm like,
Yes.
if you had red, blue, and yellow on your color palette, you remove one of the colors, what does that leave you? I said, you've got palms on your palette. We can grow palms. You shouldn't take it off your palette. There's a place for everything.
I battle with that here, to be honest with you. I know I do a lot of work with our little town here, and we're called Oak Point because we have a ton of oaks here. We have post oaks, and we just have a lot of oaks. And people have this thought in their mind that palms don't belong here, but that's a pretty ignorant idea because obviously they're native to our area here. They're native all the way through like South Texas. And people just, I guess there's this concept that people don't, maybe it's like you have to either have palms or you have to have oaks, but you can't have both. And I think that's a pretty
Yep.
odd way of living because you absolutely can have both, and they both look really great together.
One of the most remarkable things that's in my mind that I remember was when I was in the military and I was in California and I was stationed out at 29 Palms, and we go into Palm Springs. This is before all the malls and that took over, when they actually had downtowns that were thriving. And you'd come in there and they had Washingtonia foliifera lining the streets, and they'd have red and blue lights on them. So from a distance, it gave this like purple haze just kind of coming out the mountain and looking down the street. And you'd see all these, restaurants and nice businesses, but that purple haze underneath those palms was just magnificent. And then they had a white light for like a street light underneath it. But that look, that incredible look of the color lit up palms like that was just so amazing. And I wish we could recreate that here in this town, at least for me. I would love to see that colonnade of foliferas and lit up like that instead of the poor quality choice trees, like I said, the ash trees that we have downtown that are just always a problem. This would have looked so much better, and then accent them with a smaller native tree.
Yeah.
In Alpine, Texas, they use a number of native trees like mescal bean, the Texas mountain laurel, as
Hmm.
a street tree, and that's beautiful combined with palms. It's not overgrowing, and it's drought tolerant and evergreen and beautiful flowering, everything you want, and then accenting it with the palms. That's what we need, more of that. More people with a vision for the future of incorporating all that together.
I I'm convinced if I'm in any position that I get to make a decision, I'm convinced. I mean, I already am. I'm always trying to get people's eyes opened up. And you joked earlier, Teddy, but that Mexicana right there, that literally is my size. Like I always joke, Jeff, that if I can get between 5 and 7 feet of trunk, like that's the perfect size because it's eye level. When I'm in the pool, I can look straight at it. I get that beautiful look. And as they get older, they get taller, obviously, but that's like my perfect size right there. I love the look of those. It's incredible. And telling people that that is almost 20 years old when you add in the time in the container, it'll blow people's mind. And I really think that may help. I'd like to think that it should, but when people want to cut stuff down like that, you would say, "Man, it's 20 years of growth. Like, do you really not care? Like,
Yeah,
does that not matter?" And to some people, it doesn't matter, but it should matter.
right. I like that it's not overgrowing the space. You're still utilizing it and getting the form and function without it being 100 feet tall.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's where you get a lot of people complaining, well, they're just so tall and they don't give you any shade. Well, you bring stuff down like that. And I said, you love roses, but how many people do you see climbing underneath the rose bush for shade? Yet you're willing to plant roses and you're willing to plant shrubs or grass. The grass isn't giving you any shade. I
Right.
mean, that really perplexes people because they don't know what to say. I'm like, everything doesn't have to be a wide spreading tree. There are benefits. I said a California, or not California, Canary Island date palm, where the fronds in California grow 20 feet. So you got 20 feet one direction, 20 feet. That's 40 feet of shade. It's like a shade tree.
It
And
is.
I said, that's not shade if you were, looking for something like that. So, it's just a matter of what you're choosing. You're choosing a Mexican fan palm. Yeah, it's going to grow tall, out of reach,
And
but
look
choose
ugly at
something
some
different
point.
and then clump them together, cluster them. If you're that was one example they used was like at the bus stop, they had this picture of a Mexican fan palm at this bus stop surrounded by concrete. And I said, well, at least you had that pole to get the shade of the pole. But if you had a cluster of them or you had a different kind that wasn't growing so fast out of bounds, that was a Mexican sable and a cluster of them, you'd have the shade. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, look what they build for shade structures at the bus stop. It's not 40 feet wide. It's still a little tiny
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't grow, but if you use the right palms, they'll be in scale.
Yeah, I think we just have to keep on working to convince people. And I think my yard is probably 10 years behind you, but I can honestly say I can relate to what the before picture is on your yard. I can relate to that because we basically we got rid of our yard when we bought this house was so overgrown. There were privets everywhere. There was just elms all over the place. They were growing into each other. We cut down so many unuseful trees and basically gave us a blank slate. I don't quite I don't quite have the jungle that you do, and I don't know that here I'm gonna have that jungle mainly because my kids always tell me and remind me that they can't toss a baseball through a jungle. It's hard to throw a football through your yard right there. So my kids
Yep.
do like some open space, but definitely I got sables, 10, 15 feet apart. Some are much closer, and I'm on year six-ish at this point, and I could tell palm fronds that were 15 feet apart are now almost touching, and I'm getting to that point where I think like the next year or two is going to be awesome because they're really going to start to bulk up and create the shade I want and create that landscape. And yeah, I love what you've done there.
On the bottom left below the Argentinian saguaro, there's a Phoenix Theophrastes and Brahea decumbens right there. And yeah, and if we're all the way over to the right, there'd be another Theophrastes over there. My bigger Theophrastes is in the backyard,
How'd you
but
get your Theophrasti? Who's your seed source?
what's that? Endangered palm seed, the one Tobias Spanner and that from Europe.
Oh, rare palm seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
RPS. Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've got one. I have a single Theophrasti that's probably 3 to 5 gallon at this point. That's definitely one of the ones that's on my list of ones to grow. They're very interesting. I do have a Canariensis that I do want to take to my ranch, but my ranch is literally the polar opposite of your climate. Like it couldn't be any different. It's East Texas, humid,
Mhm.
hot, rains more. Like my wife always makes this joke anytime I say, "Oh, it's raining in Reclaw." She always says, "It's always raining in Reclaw." Like 'cause it's always raining out there, and everything is lush. It's green. It's all pine, loblolly, timber kind of forests. And I'm gonna try Canariensis out there because there is nothing like a wingspan of 40 feet of a. They're just beautiful, beautiful palms.
Used to be my favorite palm. It is not. They're
Uh-oh.
around here in town, and last year because it was so mild, they looked a lot better this year, and they use them down in El Paso, but they do better down in El Paso. But I decided not to. Same thing with Nanoprops. So my
Oh,
friend
Yeah, I
in
was going to ask you if you had one of those.
no, my friend in Vegas, it's his favorite poem, and I'm like, I don't have enough clear sunshine. They demand full sun. I don't have full sun, and there would be something maybe I'd consider, but then you're looking at a clumping palm that forms a clump, probably occupies a space by 12 by 12 feet, and no, I don't have that. So he says, why don't you plant one at least? I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't. Um, I'm like, they're okay, I understand in that, but I said, I don't have the space or the sunlight. And I actually did try a couple times, but not enough sunlight and they withered away. So I do grow
wow.
Trachycarpus real well. They
That's
do really
surprising.
well here.
Yeah, that is interesting because I know for me, our trackies basically shut down growth from like July to about October, and then they pick back up again. It just gets too hot for them. They just don't grow.
Mine are growing right now, lots of new leaves, and they're really pretty. There's one in town that used to be really quite beautiful and was growing like in pure sand in a parking lot and everything, but I think they turned off the irrigation and it's still there. It doesn't look as good.
Hmm.
But I was a little surprised in the intense heat location it was at that it was really beautiful.
Hmm.
But I'm sure that's only if it had water and they turned the water off. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I love trying new things. That's why I'd like to try Bacario Phoenix. Uh, that would be
Well, what's
available.
stopping you?
Availability. Bacario Phoenix Alfredii. I'd have to find one. And I looked around, couldn't find one. Then somebody said from Palmquest, they said, "Oh, I can send you one," but then that didn't happen. There wasn't the follow through. But oh well. I also like uh, Hemidorias, the radicalis and microspadics.
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, they have that. They like my yard. They seem to do well. They have that delicate growth, that fineness to them.
Have you had any sables that you've grown that perished?
Yeah, for unknown reasons, they just never, because they were all grown from seed and they just never. Well, I shouldn't make it public on here. If the ML ever looks at that, well, ML gave me seedlings, but when somebody gives you too many seedlings and you're working and you don't have time, um, they didn't all survive. Like Rosie Eye didn't survive, and it wasn't because it didn't even make it to the ground. So,
Yep.
you know, sometimes there's just too much of stuff to deal with at one time. So I usually tell them, just give me a couple or one or something like that, that I can focus my attention on. Don't give me a bunch of stuff I can't take care of. Because I do have another life too.
No, 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 no. That's how Teddy and I always joke. Whenever I used to buy stuff prior to me owning this business, it was all well, even now, if I do a trade with somebody, it's always like I want to trade for two or three. I don't I plan I plan for accidents, I plan for mishaps. Like I just traded 2 months ago for four Jubea chilensis, and they're probably almost a gallon at this point. And I've had squirrels eat the hearts out of them. Squirrels love to do that. Hopefully, you don't have any squirrels by you because they're evil.
I
And
have
they were
raccoon.
well, or that too. But I had the Jubeias out in front on my driveway, and then literally I got back from vacation, and one of them got chewed up. I was like, "Come on!" But they do that when they're like liner size. But I thought at 1 gallon we're probably already past the point. But no, they decided to just go ahead and ruin my day. So yeah, I always buy multiples because. And two, I found I plant them throughout my yard, and I realize that we have a microclimate all over the place, and just to see how differently they do in the front of my property, which is way more sheltered, where the back has a bit of a valley and it gets colder back there. So seeing how things behave, I always plant at least a couple of each.
And the climate here, I've had Jubia chilensis down to 5 degrees with no problem.
Wow. See, but you don't have to contend with the crap I have to deal with, which is like I'm in a transitional zone too. So it's amazing what in North Texas we can get away with as compared to just an hour and a half north in Oklahoma City.
Hmm.
Oklahoma is a wildly different place than Texas. Wildly different. And yeah, I mean, I get ice, I get snow. We get wet, heavy snow, and our big thing is we get the ice and the ice storms that just freeze the crown. And the feather palms absolutely, I mean, everything doesn't really enjoy that, but the feather palms truly do not enjoy a crown full of ice.
Exactly. So when I grew Jubia chilensis, I got the seeds and then I put them in a vice grip and just turned it until you hear that snap, and then they'd pop open, and then I'd take the seed out and plant it. And I have really good germination success doing it that way, as opposed to waiting till they germinated out of their own shell. Just FYI in case you
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
know that.
it'll take forever. Absolutely
Mhm.
forever, yeah.
Right. And that way I was able to germinate a lot of them. I used to have buckets of the seeds because we went to California in Balboa Park. You just like scoop
Yeah.
up buckets and buckets of them. And it's like
It's
nobody wants anything here though.
It's it's funny how Balboa Park, I mean, I know that name. Teddy, you probably do too. Everyone knows these, or like there's the ones in Mission Park, I believe it is, or something like that as
Yeah,
well. Like
right.
there's some plants that are funny. I'm in Texas, he's in Tennessee, and we all know the same palms. Everyone just knows those particular plants. It's amazing.
Yeah, so palms are I think really wonderful. So I do have Sabal uricana. I wish it would grow a little faster. Um, that's why I mean, if I could do things over again, maybe I'd have it in a different location. Um, but I saw the ones like at John Ferry Garden in Houston area there.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were really remarkable, and why we don't see more of, well, I know why we don't see more of some things because it takes time and everybody wants like instant. Like that's why you see Washington Robusta because it grows so dang fast.
I
Yeah.
know.
Um, and that's what nurseries want. Something that's going to grow real fast and they can get a lot of money for something that didn't cost them hardly anything to produce. So,
Yeah.
things that take time. Yeah, I'm caught between two worlds. Sometimes it's good because if I can get over to Texas, I can pick up certain things, or get over to Arizona and California. But right in this area, it's like sometimes I feel like I'm living in the dead zone. There are no palm enthusiasts here. There's no camaraderie for me to talk to. So being a horticulturalist here with beautiful plants, it's really hard to find anybody else here that has that interest because a lot of people are retired or they're young and they're busy and working, and they have like the standard yard with covered with rock and a cactus here and a ash tree there, and that's it. And they don't have time to deal with anything else. And you can have so much more. And then I run the master gardeners, and you think they'd be better. And um, that's a whole funny story in itself because people always want to talk to a master gardener, and as opposed to talking to the agent, because if you say you're a master gardener, obviously you know more than anybody in the world. And then you see their gardens, and they're pleasant, but a lot of them don't have anything in their garden. And they're calling me like, "Oh, do you think I need to water this plant?" And I'm like, "You're a master gardener. You should know you need to water." Um, but
Yeah,
anyway,
I have a lot of native folks around me. A lot of, I we touched on the topic in the beginning. Teddy and I have always lightly talked about it because I know it probably gets us in trouble with a lot of people. But yeah, there's a lot of native people around here, and I mean, in their mind, palms aren't native, and it's just like, well yeah, they are.
yeah,
And
I hear that they're all tropical. I'm
not with
like,
that
no, they're not.
attitude, sir. Not with that attitude.
they grow all the way from the southeast. They grow out in the deserts and that they're not all tropical island palms. You know, you've got locked in your head the coconut palms on the Hawaiian beach or the
Exactly.
Caribbean or something. You know, there are other palms.
Well, I
And
mean, if you look at like Gary Holler in North Carolina, Teddy, you've been to his place, right? And you think about what grows in the swamps of North Carolina. I mean, there is nothing more diametrically opposed than the swamps of North Carolina and Hawaii or in Fiji, right? Like those two things are not the same, but they definitely are palms.
For sure, there's palms in both. Yeah,
yep. And you
So
guys prove about the sables and minor and that and how cold they are. So yeah, I was gonna say in 2011 when we had our big freeze there, and people will still to this day they say all the palms died. And I said, no, they didn't. The leaves died, they got burnt off, but they grew back, and then they're all puzzled. And I said, you know, if that freeze had happened in December, followed by more cold, they probably would have died. But it happened February 3rd, 2011, and they froze, but then we were followed by 80-degree weather. So they didn't do a deep freeze into the trunk and kill the buds. They came back. But I said Aleppo pines, which are from the Mediterranean, we had ones that were 80 feet tall with 3 to 4 foot trunks. They flat out died. And you know, we people think pines are all like from somehow Alaska or something, and palms are all from the tropics. And I said, no, they're cold hardy palms and they're tender pines. Depends on what you pick.
that's a
So,
lot of it, right?
yep.
It really, that goes back to generalizations. Palms are all tropical or pines are all cold weather, and it's like if you sat down, I think also the problem is availability, right? I mean, and I think that's why
Oh,
Teddy and
yeah.
I both started our nurseries is my experience in 21 after our freeze when I had a landscaper. I came here from Illinois and I said, "Hey, we're building a pool and we're going to do palms." And the guy brought me all robustas and they all died, obviously. And
Yeah.
that experience in the spring of trying to acquire 121 sables that I planted throughout this property led me down like dark alleys on eBay and all sorts of other places. And availability is the problem, yeah, because you're right. They would rather try to grow something that grows fast, is easy to grow, cheap to grow, and oftentimes probably have job security in the fact that it's going to die in the first year or two.
Yeah. Around here, one of the nurseries brought in needle palms, and they're like in a 3 gallon container for 60 or $65. And you could go and get a Mexican fan palm for like $30 in a 5 gallon container. And people judge it by the size and the price,
Yes. Yes.
which is sad. 'Cause
Big
I'm
and
like,
cheap.
yeah, and I'm like, that's a much better palm, and like I say, like the sables, well, they don't grow fast enough. But then when the other palm is growing fast, and they're like, oh, it grows too fast. So
exactly.
if I cut the trunk in half, it'll resprout, right? Oh, and you see that sometimes. It's like, no, it ain't coming back. It's gone. You do that to it. So, but if you took a Brachy Armada and get that beautiful blue look,
Oh,
30 years from now, it's not going to be, like 50, 60 feet tall. It'll be in scale still.
Yes.
Yeah, so
30
great
years
thing.
from now, though, that you just proved the point of a lot of these people. 30 years from now is remarkable to think that some of these
Yeah.
palms just take that long.
Most people, how long is it? I forgot that most people only live in their house like 10, 11 years or something like that, and then they move and go get a different house. So, yeah, we don't have that permanency of place. I was talking to friends. I said I wanted to move to Hawaii. I like Hawaii a lot, but I said it's all the way across the ocean, though. You know how big a move that is?
Yeah.
Unless I'm willing to give up, like, try to give up everything and just move. And I said, but I can't. So I said, I guess I'm gonna stay here, maybe, but I'll stay until I can't take care of it. When I get too old and I figure I can't take care of it, then I'll make a decision to to move somewhere, I guess.
The
But
only advantage to like moving to Hawaii is that stuff does grow so fast that you could have like a mature garden in like 5 years, you know?
right. And the trouble is now is the time to be buying in certain areas there before it's, another 10, 20 years, it probably won't be affordable anymore
Yeah.
because there are little bits of Hawaii, true Hawaii still left, but it's going to disappear. Because you see all the tourist places. Like I've been there and I just do not like the tourist places. It's just not me. And you get into some of the back country of old Hawaii, and it's like going back in time, and the people are so nice. And people say it's really expensive. I'm like, no, you could stop by the side of the road and buy fish, for a pretty good price, big chunk of fish, and go home and grill it or something. And that's what we kind of think about, but now we think about it's all touristy and expensive. Yeah, I've been to a couple of those places. We went out to dinner and I was like, you've got to be kidding, the prices of dinner. And then we went to a friend's house and bought fish from the side of the road, or we went to the Pahoa fish and chips. And that was a funny story because it said $5. And I said, oh, and I'm thinking $5 for one fish stick. And I didn't realize that it was $5 for five fish sticks, fresh fish. And so no, I said, no, I want two. And they said, are you sure you want two? And I said, yeah, I want two fish, because we were going to dinner that night.
Yeah.
And so it turned out I had 10 big planks of fish. And I ate them all. I did not eat dinner that night. We went out to eat, and I just sat there, looked at it, and they said, don't you want a salad even? I'm like, no, I can't eat anything more. Have a drink, a lemonade or something I had. And
Probably the
but
best fish you've had in a long time.
that was really good fish. Yeah. I don't usually eat fish here being out in the desert because you get to buy it frozen or it smells really bad, and if it smells, it's not fresh. But there, it was no smell whatsoever. It was so fresh, mahi mahi and that. It was just wonderful. But yeah.
So it's been interesting, Teddy. We've talked a lot with our friends in the Southeast. You're in Tennessee, I'm in Texas, have Jeff in New Mexico. Last week we just did an episode with it just came out 2.5 hours ago actually, with Jimmy up in Ohio. And
Hmm.
we're getting this pretty good blend of people from all over the country, and to hear everyone's stories of how they got to where they are and what they can grow, and their progress over all this time it's been really cool. So I'm really happy to have you on, Jeff. I really appreciate you jumping on and having pictures. I was actually going to ask you if you had a PowerPoint. I don't usually ask people that come on the show to do homework, but you obviously are already prepared and you were ready to go. I think what you showed today was just mind-blowingly incredible. So I thank you very much for spending the last, I don't know, what, hour and a half with us. So
Well, you're welcome. One
thank you
thing,
so
like one of my favorite pleasures right now at this point in time is being able to go out and sit early in the morning with a nice cup of coffee while it's quiet and still cool early in the morning, to sit in that sunken garden and just enjoy what has happened and how everything. And my view is that one, um that's my view from where I sit. Partial view. I mean, it's more expansive than
beautiful.
just that as I turn. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
being able
incredible.
to see that and watch the hummingbirds and the birds fly in and out and different things, and I wonder whose garden is this I'm sitting in. How
That's
did it
so
get like this, and who does this belong to? Because did I do this? How on earth did I do this? Because now I'm in my 70s now, and it's these blocks get heavier, and bending over, building and digging and hauling bags of this and that, and it it adds up.
it keeps you healthy though.
Yeah. Well, it keeps you inspired too. It's not just the physical, it's your mind. is inspired so you have that tranquil peace in the garden, enough to enjoy the coffee, have conversation with friends. But it's the fact that you watch that plant grow from infancy.
Yep.
You can visually see its potential for the future. And somebody said to me the other day, but you plant these things and you're never going to see them. You're like in 30 years from now, probably won't even be here. But I said, you plant for the future.
Yep.
Like I said, like my neighbor's 26. 30 years from now, he'll be 56. He'll still be fairly young, but everything will be grown up a lot more. But my peace and my comfort is knowing that I got him interested in palms. He's planted them and that they will develop in his lifetime, which is great. I wish I could see the Chilean wine palm picture. It's growing. It's doing pretty well. I'm just like, I just want to come on, 5 or 10 feet of trunk. Is that asking for too much before I'm gone?
Probably. Unfortunately,
It
probably
could
those
be.
things are those are deadly slow. It's terrible, but they're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're so imposing in their size as they get older.
So I keep up with a regular watering regime, not over or under, but and the fertilizing, hoping to encourage it. So anyway, that's where I say where I plant more meal palms because I have a lot of fan palms like that, and I love the Sabals, but having some really nice feather palms really helps offset it more. It just brings another dimension into it.
Yeah. So so as we will or as we wrap it up, is there any way how can people interact with you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've inspired people who are in New Mexico who are like, I want to be like this guy. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can contact me through my work email. I have no internet at home or anything. I have my phone and then I have my work email. So the best thing, because it seems like I'm always at work, is contact me through my email address at work,
Okay.
which is you have it, don't you?
I do, yeah. I can drop it in the description of this video as well. I know you're on Facebook too, right?
On Facebook.
I've seen
Um,
you.
yeah, I have an account. I can't access. It's funny. I can't access it at work. My computer here at work will no longer allow me. Says I have to make a whole new account, and I've tried to do the right passwords. Facebook is really messed up, and I have it on my phone, so I can access my phone, but I can't access it on the main computer, which I used to be able to do. Now I can't.
Well, I'll make sure that I figure out how to add your contact information in the description so people can get a hold of you if they have questions and want to extract any more insight out of your brain.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good.
Teddy, any final words, my friend?
Man, what a treat. I think yeah, we didn't expect the pictures today, and um I'm blown away honestly, and for how fast things grow in the southeast. It seems like you've got incredible growth right there. Obviously, you've got a green thumb and you know what you're doing, Jeff, because your yard looks amazing. I just can't thank you enough for being on. Really, really appreciate you.
It's a matter of just loving what you do and letting your plant friends know that, not just
Yeah,
people, but the plants themselves.
for sure.
I love
Like,
it.
how are you today? You're looking really beautiful. Keep it up. Good job.
Exactly.
Thank
Exactly.
Encouragement,
you.
positive words of encouragement, right?
Yep.
Tell the Jubea that. That might help.
I do. I do. I go out there, I'm like, what do you want? What do you need? How can I help you? You're beautiful the way you are, but just a little bit taller.
Just 2 feet taller if you could.
Look at your friends around you. Look how they're looking. So
Uh,
yeah, and anyway,
well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Teddy. Episode 19 of the Palmcast. Jeff, we reserve the right to ask you to come back again and tell us everything else you've done.
sure, anytime.
Awesome.
I love
Teddy,
it. Thank you for inviting me. That means
Thank
a
you for
lot to
being
me.
on. Oh my gosh, same here.
we're very happy. Yeah, absolutely super happy to have you on.
Yeah,
So,
I hope some of the information really helps people, helps you from my perspective, from where I'm coming from in New Mexico. Every area is different. So,
Absolutely.
you know, what grows or fertilizers you use or different things could be different in your area because soils vary, climates vary. But yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see everybody on the next episode. This is episode 19 of the Palmcast with Jeff Anderson. Amazing green thumb and yard in New Mexico. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Teddy. We'll
Thank
talk to
you.
everybody soon.
Okay,
See ya.
See you
bye
guys.
now.